In this presentation, we'll look at the design tools that are used for computer programming. Okay, so let's look at the design tools that we are using in our VCE course. They are an IPO chart. And really this is an overall summary, if you like, of what data goes in, what information comes out, and what are the steps to convert the data into information. And these are in a 3-column chart that goes from input, then processing, then output. Obviously the name IPO. Data dictionary. This contains the definition for each variable used in the program. Remember, we talked about variables as being storage containers, and also its data type and what it is used for in the program. It is important also to remember that the naming of your variables is really important to indicate the data that it contains. Object dictionary talks about the objects used in the program, particularly on the form, and their type. So whether it's just something like a label or a text box, list box, and so on, and what it's used for. Again, the naming of the objects again is important because it can contain a fair bit of detail about what that object is doing. A layout diagram. Now that describes what the form looks like, things like colors, fonts, and so on, the format. And finally, pseudocode, which is sort of an English version of the code used in scripting language, and it should demonstrate the variables used, the program control, and the input and output of data and information. What we're going to do is apply these to a particular design brief, and a solution is required for an app. The app needs to be able to provide the product of two numbers. So two numbers are input, and then the app calculates the product of the two numbers and displays it. So, and that's what we just said. So let's look at the IPO chart. Well, the IPO chart contains data going in, information coming out, and the process that converts data into information. And here it is here. So input, two numbers which are integers, that's what goes in. And then there's the steps to how the numbers are put in and contained, and then the product is determined by multiplication of the two numbers, and then finally the numbers are displayed on the screen. So the output is the product of the two numbers, hence the IPO chart. A data dictionary. So what variables are we going to use in this program? And it, as we said before, it describes each variable and the storage container and its data type and what it's used for. So we have a look here. Data used in the program. Well, part of the first variable rather is the first number to be put into the program, and we'll call that number 1. Yeah, not very creative, but it does tell us what's going on, and the data type of that one's an integer. The second number to be input is number 2. It's also an integer. And then the final variable used in this program is the product of the two numbers. We're going to call the variable name product, and it's also going to be of an integer data type. So there's our data dictionary. Our object dictionary. Now there's a few objects required in this, and these are the things that either give us information on what the program is doing, or are active in the actual program, either capturing data or displaying information. And so look at our objects. So there's the form to display app, which is the whole window, if you like, where the program happens. Then we want a heading in the app window just to tell us what's going on. The instructions of what to do for the user. That's again, that's a label. A label for text box number 1. In other words, this is going to be the first number you type in, and that'll be a label. And the same for the second one. This is the second number you're going to type in, and that will be a label. And then finally a label showing that where the product of the two numbers will appear. We want a text box num1 to store and display and capture that first number that's typed in. Text box num2 is to store and display the second number to be put in, and then finally we display the product of the two numbers in text box prod, which obviously is a text box, and then there's a button prod. Now that's the point of the button is that's the event that starts this whole script running. So the event, of course, is the button click. Okay, so there's our objects to be used in the program. A layout diagram, and again, this is a plan, a graphic plan of what the form will look like, or the form or the window which the app appears in. It tells us the colors, the fonts, where the objects are located, and their appearance. And here it is here. So we've got our Multiply app is the name of the app itself, and we have some details about font and colors. Again, the instruction box is below that, and then our labels and our text boxes again are below that with indications of font, color, and so on. And then finally the button at the bottom, which will be where we click to get the app to actually carry out its calculation. Finally, once we've done that, we need to plan the actual code of how we're going to get the program to work. And this is, as we said, in the English version, which indicates things like the variables, the program control, and where information goes in and out. So if we have a look at the pseudocode, we can see it's public sum button prod underscore click. In other words, when you click button prod, do the following things. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have set number 1, number 2, and product as integers, and the program knows that that's the variables, and that's the sort of data it's going to these variables are going to hold. Okay, the next one we said is number 1. That's the variable, gets the value, and it's the integer value. In other words, we're taking the text from text box 1 num, num1 it should be, and we're actually changing that into an integer. So if we type 56 into text box num1, we'll find that if we just use the text, it's just 2 digits, 5 and 6, doesn't have any value. But when we use the integer function, it actually changes it into a number with 56 value. So that's why we've got that integer around text box num1.text. And then we see the same thing in the next one with number 2. We see it's got the integer of text box num2.text, and that indicates that again we're changing that number into an integer or a value. And finally, product gets a value of number 1 multiplied by number 2. We don't have to change this into an int because we're just displaying it. We're not using it for a calculation. So it gets the value of number 1 times number 2, and then finally text box prod.text gets the value of product. In other words, we're now displaying product in the text box prod, and that's the end of the program. So we end the subroutine there, and that means that our program is over. But what you've done there is effectively describe each step of the program with that basically sort of English description. And that is a description of the design tools that we use in computer programming.